Right now, there's at least one item sitting in your Walmart cart that's quietly counting down to failure. And the people who used to stand behind the service counter know it better than anyone. Before your wallet pays the price for a bad experience one more time, I'm going to be the one to tell you straight. You'd be awesome if you subscribed and liked this video. 1. Plastic clothes hangers. You open your closet one morning and hear a dry snap. A plastic hanger just broke in half, taking your jacket down to the floor with it. Size-wise, this might be the smallest item on the whole list, but it's the biggest seller because almost everyone who walks into Walmart's home goods aisle tosses a bag of hangers into the cart without thinking twice. In terms of profit per square foot of shelf space, few items beat plastic hangers since the manufacturing cost is just a few pennies each. A bag of 30 usually runs around $3, working out to less than 10 cents per hanger, while a solid wood hanger sold individually can go for as much as $1 a piece. That gap is exactly why plastic hangers keep the shelves stocked. The plastic used for this cheap line is typically low-density recycled material, never treated to hold up under sustained weight. Most of these hangers can only handle about 2 to 3 pounds of continuous load before the neck starts to bend, while a wet winter coat after a rainstorm can weigh nearly double that. Hang a winter coat or a few pairs of thick jeans on one for a while, and the neck starts to sag, then cracks right at the point of maximum stress. Hot, humid summers make the plastic more brittle too, so a light bump from closing the closet door can snap it right there. And if you store hangers in a cold garage over winter, the brittleness of that recycled plastic gets noticeably worse, making the breakage rate right out of the bag much higher than hangers kept indoors. The problem isn't just losing one hanger, it's the clothes that were hanging on it hitting the floor, getting wrinkled, sometimes pulling down whatever's next to it too. On top of that, these cheap hangers are usually sold in bulk packs, meaning you rarely buy just one or two but end up grabbing a full bag of 20 or 30, so the total yearly replacement hanger cost is up more than you'd think. If you need to restock your closet, go straight for solid wood hangers or coated metal ones. They cost a bit more up front but hold several times the weight, and you'll almost never need to replace them for years. 2. Rugs and doormats. Fresh out of the package, that $12 doormat looks soft and thick, and stepping on it barefoot feels great. But just a few weeks in, you start noticing tiny fibers scattered across the floor, sticking to everyone's socks in the house. The rubber backing underneath, whose whole job is keeping the mat from sliding, starts flaking off in chunks that stick to your hardwood or tile floor. The mechanism behind this is pretty simple. This cheap line of rugs is designed to look good on the display shelf more than to hold up long-term in your home. The fibers used are usually short and loosely woven, with far fewer strands per square inch than a durable loop pile rug. So just a few dozen footsteps a day starts fraying the edges, curling them up into a rough lip that's an easy thing to trip over, especially dangerous for older folks in the house. Put one down in front of the kitchen sink where humidity and friction are constant, and you'll see that rubber backing degrade twice as fast as a rug sitting in a dry living room because moisture works its way into the tiny pores in the rubber and breaks it down from the inside. A curled up mat at the bathroom door isn't just an eyesore, it's a genuine fall risk. Savvy shoppers check the thickness of the backing before they even reach for their wallet, looking for a heavier vulcanized rubber layer which costs a bit more but can be machine washed repeatedly without the backing peeling apart, and that backing thickness is often printed right on the label in millimeters if you take the time to read it. But the story doesn't stop there, because the next item will have you rethinking your entire storage closet. 3. Plastic storage bins. Packing your entire winter wardrobe into a stack of 644 plastic bins feels like you've just solved a year's worth of storage problems, but lift the top bin once it's full and you'll hear a small crack. That's the lid popping off or a corner handle snapping clean off. The plastic used to mold this cheap line of bins is usually noticeably thinner than the sturdier line from the same brand. The cheap version's walls typically run about 30 thousandths of an inch thick, while the heavier-duty bins from the same manufacturer can be almost 50% thicker, and that's no coincidence. Shaving just a few percentage points off wall thickness saves a serious amount on manufacturing costs across millions of units, but in exchange, the bottom of the bin sags easily under the weight of books, decorations, or heavy clothing. This thin polypropylene plastic has another downside most people don't notice. Stored in a hot attic over summer, UV rays and high heat make the plastic progressively more brittle, so bins kept in the attic tend to crack much faster than ones stored under a cool bed, even from the same production batch. Plenty of families discover a cracked corner the very first time they pull a bin down from the attic or garage, right when they need it most. Here's a trick most people never think of. Press down on the bottom of the bin right there in the store before buying it. If the bottom gives easily under a light finger press, that's a clear sign it won't hold up under real weight once you get it home. That low starting price turns out to be a trap since you'll end up buying a whole new set after a season or two. 4 cheap shower heads. Standing in front of the shower head display, you're drawn in by the ones with multiple spray settings and shiny chrome handles that look just as good as premium models. The real issue is in the part you can't see, the rubber gaskets inside. Most of the failures happen with exactly this low-priced line, mainly because the gaskets are made from thin synthetic rubber that can't handle months of constant water pressure. The result is leaking at the connections, weaker water flow over time, and on some models a faint hissing sound whenever you turn the valve. In areas with hard water, minerals build up in those tiny spray holes much faster on cheap shower heads because the holes aren't treated with any anti-scale coating, so water pressure drops noticeably after just a few months, while mid-range shower heads usually have a scale-resistant coating that keeps flow steady much longer. What's worth noting is that installing a new shower head usually means drilling holes, mounting a bracket, and sometimes even cutting into the existing pipe. So when the shower head fails after just a few months, you're not just out the cost of a new one, you're also stuck redoing the installation, sometimes having to call a plumber because the old drill holes no longer line up. And a plumber's service call usually costs far more than the shower head itself was worth. If it were me, I'd go straight for a mid-range model, usually about 50% more than the cheapest option, with thicker rubber gaskets and metal fittings instead of plastic, which makes a real difference in durability. And if you think the bathroom is the only room affected, wait until the next item. It'll have you rethinking your whole closet. 5 cheap clothing. The t-shirt in your hand feels soft, and the price is easy on the wallet, but try gently pinching the fabric between 2 fingers before you toss it in the cart. The cheapest clothing on the rack usually blends cotton with a high ratio of low-cost synthetic fiber, sometimes as low as 60% cotton and 40% synthetic, which causes the fabric to shrink noticeably after the very first machine wash. A shirt that fit perfectly when you bought it can come out noticeably shorter after one wash in hot water, while the color fades visibly too. The stitching under the arms and at the hems is another weak point, coming loose after just a few wears and washes, especially on single-layer seams instead of double reinforced ones. Fabric woven from cheap synthetic fiber also tends to pill in high-friction areas like underarms and waistbands, a phenomenon called fabric pilling, which usually shows up clearly after just 5 to 7 washes, while better quality cotton can handle dozens of washes before showing similar signs. You should also pay attention to timing on the shelves, since the cheapest clothing is often shipped in bulk at the start of a season just to fill display space, meaning fabric quality between batches isn't as consistent as you'd assume. Fundamentally, this is a low-price strategy to keep shelves stocked seasonally, products designed for a short lifespan, worn a few times then replaced, not built to last for years. The trick is reading the fabric content label carefully before adding it to your cart. Items with 70% cotton or higher tend to hold their shape far better than ones made entirely of cheap synthetic fiber. For kids' clothes or everyday items like t-shirts and summer shorts, spending a few extra dollars for a better quality line actually saves money in the long run, since you won't be replacing them every few months. 6. Wall clocks and decor. From a distance, Walmart's wall decor section looks like a small gallery, thin-handed clocks, gold-framed pictures, and decorative shelves in every style. Get closer, and you'll notice the outer coating is fairly thin, needing only a few weeks hanging in direct sunlight through a window before it starts fading or peeling at the edges. Cheap wall clocks usually run on low-grade quartz movements, with the minute or hour hand sometimes slipping out of alignment after a short time, throwing off the time without you even noticing until you look closely. Some models even have the hands fall off entirely after just a few months because the hand mounting pin isn't tightened properly during mass assembly. That cheap quartz movement also runs on low-grade batteries prone to acid leakage after about a year without replacement. The cheap zinc-carbon battery that comes included in the box typically only runs steady for about 6 months before weakening, while a good quality alkaline battery can last up to 2 years without leaking, and once that leaked solution reaches the gears inside, the hands stop moving completely even though the battery still looks usable. Picture frames and small decorative shelves face the same fate, their thin bases making them prone to tipping, especially on a shelf that isn't perfectly level. These items are manufactured with fairly wide tolerance for defects to keep the price down, so quality varies noticeably between batches. Some hold up fine for a year, others fail within the first week. Here's a tip: prioritize clocks with a metal casing instead of molded plastic, real glass faces instead of scratch-prone plastic ones, and check how sturdy a picture frame's base feels right in the store before you take it home. Don't just go by the photo on the packaging. What's coming up next will catch even the sharpest shoppers off guard. 7. Laundry baskets and hampers. An average load of laundry for a family of 4 can weigh more than 20 pounds when wet, and that number is exactly why the lightweight plastic basket you just grabbed off the shelf is riskier than you'd think. The first time you loaded it up with wet clothes, you'll feel the real difference between the basket in your hands and the one you pictured on the shelf. The handles on this cheap line of baskets are usually just thin molded plastic with no reinforced core inside, only able to handle about half that weight before starting to crack. One quick way to check right in the store is to squeeze the handle with your hand. If it feels stiff and brittle instead of slightly flexible, chances are it'll break within the first few uses. After just a few trips back and forth between the washer and dryer, the handle starts developing hairline cracks and eventually snaps completely, sending the whole basket of clothes crashing to the floor right in the middle of the hallway. The bottom of the basket is another weak spot, designed thin to keep overall weight down, which causes it to warp on one side if you're in the habit of dumping an entire week's worth of laundry in at once. For larger families with heavier laundry loads each time, this flimsy type of basket is almost guaranteed to fail within the first few months of use. Instead, look for a basket with a metal frame built into thicker fabric or plastic. It's a bit heavier to carry empty, but holds up far better once it's loaded, and a lot of these models list their weight limit right on the label in pounds, a detail worth comparing before you decide. 8. Air mattresses. 3 in the morning, and whoever's sleeping on that $55 air mattress suddenly feels their whole body sinking toward the floor, even though everything looked fine when it was first inflated. This story is pretty common with cheap air mattresses, since the PVC material used for the outer shell is usually fairly thin, especially at the seams between air chambers. Just a small amount of pressure focused continuously on one spot, say your body weight shifting to one side as you roll over in your sleep, and that seam can start leaking air very slowly, slow enough that you don't notice right away, but enough for the mattress to deflate gradually through the night. The inflation valve is another weak point, since many cheap models use a simple plastic valve with no extra sealing gasket, letting air seep out slowly even when the valve is fully closed. Room temperature also matters more than you'd think, since air contracts in the cold. So on a winter night, when the room temperature drops just a few degrees Fahrenheit, that's enough to make the mattress feel noticeably flatter even without any puncture. And with cheap mattresses that are already inflated close to their limit to begin with, this effect is even more noticeable. In theory, an air mattress is a perfectly reasonable temporary solution for overnight guests or camping trips, but the quality of the cheap line turns that experience into getting up at midnight to reinflate it, or just giving up and sleeping on the hard floor. My advice for anyone who has guests over often is to invest in an air mattress with a thicker fabric outer shell and a built-in electric pump. It's worth the money compared to replacing a cheap one every few months. There's one more item that a lot of families buy thinking it's convenient, but the reality is exactly the opposite. 9. Store brand towels. Running your hand over a stack of folded bath towels on the shelf. You feel a softness close to a 5-star hotel towel, and the price is a lot easier on the wallet, but that feeling only lasts until the first wash. The cotton used for cheap store-brand towels is usually treated with a temporary softening agent during finishing, which makes them feel soft to the touch in the store, but that treatment washes right out after a single machine cycle. The result is towels that turn rough, with fibers starting to pill and shed all over your other laundry, especially noticeable if you wash them with darker clothes. Absorbency drops noticeably over time too, since the short cotton fibers used in cheap towels don't hold their porous structure as long as the long fibers used in premium towel lines, which are usually labeled as combed cotton, while short fibers are rarely labeled clearly, which is one way to tell them apart right at the shelf. If you look closely, you'll notice towel weight is usually printed on the hang tag in grams per square meter. Durable towels usually sit above 500 grams per square meter, while cheap ones run around 300, and that number is a far more reliable indicator than how soft it feels standing at the shelf. Price-wise, a cheap 4-pack of towels usually runs around $8 less than $2 per towel, while a pack with heavier fabric weight usually runs around $15. The gap isn't huge, but the lifespan difference is many times greater. It's a common experience for bath towels to develop a musty smell after a few months, even with regular washing, largely because lower quality fiber holds moisture longer than it should, creating conditions for bacteria to grow. 10 cheap kitchen appliances. A $14 toaster, an $18 blender, a $14.97 nonstick pan. All three sit in a price range that makes you think trying them out can't hurt much. The problem is the motor inside a cheap blender usually runs around 300 to 350 watts, enough to crush ice or blend soft fruit, but hit it with tough vegetables or large ice cubes, and the motor winds then stalls out completely, while a mid-range blender usually runs 700 watts or more, plenty of power to handle tougher ingredients without clogging. Most low-cost kitchen appliances don't have replacement parts available, meaning when the blade dulls or the power cord fails, you're forced to throw out the whole appliance rather than repair it. Cheap toasters have the same issue. The spring that pops the toast up usually weakens after just a few months, causing toast to get stuck inside or fail to pop at the right time, and in some cases, that's caused minor fires from bread sitting too long in the heating chamber. Cheap non-stick pans have a thin coating that only handles moderate heat, usually under 450 degrees Fahrenheit, and a limited number of uses. After a few dozen cooking sessions, the non-stick coating starts flaking off, and food starts sticking just like on a regular pan, while pans with a thicker coating usually handle higher heat and come with a longer manufacturer warranty, sometimes several years compared to just a few months on the cheapest models. Add up all three of these cheap items, and you're looking at about $47, which sounds like a good deal, but if even one of the three fails within the first 6 months and you have to replace it, your real total cost ends up nearly double what you'd have paid buying a slightly higher tier appliance from the start. The fastest way to save yourself the hassle is to accept spending $10 or $15 more to move up one price tier, getting a stronger motor and genuine replacement parts available for something you use every day. The last two items on this list are actually where Walmart makes the most profit, and that's exactly why I saved them for the end. 11. Mainstays furniture. The $124.99 Mainstays sofa sitting in the display area looks no different from mid-range furniture, a square frame, smooth upholstery, and a price tag that's just a fraction of what dedicated furniture brands charge. But the frame underneath is mostly made from low-density particle board pressed together with industrial adhesive, not solid wood or sturdy multi-layer plywood. The mechanism is pretty simple. Particle board is pressed from wood chips and glue, so there's no continuous wood grain to hold screw threads the way solid wood does. Every time you screw a bolt back in, the wood particles around that hole get crushed a little more, and by the third time, the screw is basically spinning freely in the hole without gripping anything. This type of furniture is essentially designed to be assembled once and left alone, not meant to be taken apart and reassembled, since screws driven into particle board can only handle 1 or 2 tightening cycles before the hole wears too wide, leaving the whole joint loose. If you've ever planned to move or rearranged your living room, taking a sofa like this apart to move it will almost certainly leave some chipping at the corners or a permanently wobbly leg. The upholstery fabric is also thinner than it first feels. After just a few months of regular use, the cushions start sagging permanently, losing their original shape, since the foam padding inside usually has a much lower density than foam used in higher-end sofas, and low-density foam recovers poorly after repeated compression. This kind of cheap furniture works fine for a rental. You'll only be in a couple of years, or a guest room that doesn't get much use. But if it's the main piece in your family living room, the extra cost of a solid wood frame is genuinely worth considering. By the way, if you're planning to buy new furniture, late August into early September is usually when Walmart offers its deepest discounts on furniture and mattresses, timed around the Labor Day weekend, so if you're not in a rush, waiting a few more weeks could be worth a lot. 12. Extended warranties on home appliances. Standing at the checkout, the cashier asks if you'd like to add an extended warranty for the TV or washing machine you just picked out, and it sounds like a small bit of peace of mind worth paying for. But looking at the profit structure, this is actually one of the highest margin categories in the entire store, well above the margin on the product it's attached to. In some cases, the profit margin on the warranty itself is several times higher than the store's average margin across everything else combined. The simple reason is that most people who buy a warranty never end up using it, or when they do need it, they find a long list of exclusions buried in the fine print. Everything from water damage to accidental drops to anything considered user error, none of it covered under the warranty. When you actually need to file a claim, you usually have to go through a third-party warranty company rather than the store directly, and the process can take weeks with a pile of paperwork, sometimes photos of the product from multiple angles, the original receipt, and then waiting for a claims adjuster to confirm everything over the phone before it's approved. It's not uncommon for the approved repair cost to come in far lower than the item's actual value, or for the warranty company to require shipping the product somewhere far away for repair, adding even more time and hassle. Do the math, and a 2 to 3 year warranty on a $200 TV can cost an extra $35 to $40, close to a fifth of the product's original price, while most modern appliances already come with a manufacturer's warranty that covers the first year, which is when manufacturing defects are most likely to show up anyway. After that first year, failure rates on most appliances drop off significantly until they genuinely start wearing out from long-term use. From flimsy plastic hangers to pricey extended warranties, now you know where it pays to go cheap, and where spending a few extra dollars buys you real durability. Not wasting money and getting products that actually last, that's the real win here. Next time you're at the checkout counter, will you actually read the fine print before buying that warranty?